On today's Minute of the Apes, we're going to shift away from doing what we like to do, which is talking about Star Wars Galactic War and what a pain-in-the-ass game it is that we can't step away from.
Take your stinking paws off me, you damn dirty ape! Exercise with an ape maker, human down. It talks. We are the keepers of the divine bound. It is our only reason for survival. We are determined to know what the apes want, war or peace. The only good human is a dead human!
Hello and welcome to Minute of the Apes Daily Podcast, where we break down every minute of the Planet of the Apes movies, 1 minute at a time. It's Friday. What are you looking for?
What?
I looked over at Richard and you were just swinging your head back and forth.
I whip my hair back and forth. No, I heard something. I heard something at the back door, and then I looked at my phone, and then I looked at the image on the screen of the painter painting the painter, painting the painter, painting the painter.
And so you were looking to see who was painting you.
Right. I was suddenly having an out of body experience, being observant and infinite regression.
I didn't mean to call you
Morrison. I can see the reader read me, man.
I didn't mean to call you out, but at the same time, it was literally like, what is going on?
Huh?
I got to know that Richard's okay and that everything's calm over there. You did not look calm. I'm so glad everything.
I'm calm. I'm zen. I'm at peace. I'm at one with myself.
You're good
and
enough.
The universe.
You're smart enough.
Yeah.
And gosh darn it, people like you.
Wow. So this is going to be the trippy episode of Minute of the Apes, because we are going to get in some wacky shit today. Sean, tell us what's going on.
All right, we're going to start minute 35 with Hasline saying he paints a fourth and a fifth, and ends with Hasline saying that some galactic disaster jumped the apes from their present to ours.
Okay, so I'm going to warn you. If I'm not telling you need to move to Colorado where certain drugs are legal, but if you need something to calm your mind while you listen to things that don't make sense, go for it. And here comes minute 35 of Escape from the Planet of the Apes.
He paints a fourth and a fifth until he paints a picture of the artist painting a picture, of the artist painting a picture, of the artist painting a picture, of the artist painting a landscape.
So infinite regression then is...
It is the moment when our artist has regressed to the point of infinity and himself becomes part of the landscape he painted and is both the observer and the observed.
Well, now, in that peculiar condition, what would he be observing if he were observing, let's say, time?
He would perceive, Mr. Bonds, that time is like a freeway with an infinite number of lanes, all leading from the past into the future, however, not into the same future. A driver in lane A may crash while a driver in lane B survives. It follows that a driver, by changing lanes, can change his future. Now, Mr. Bonds, I do not find it difficult to believe that in the dark and turbulent corridors of outer space, the impact of some distant planetary, even galactic disaster, jumped the apes from their present into ours.
All right, as of minute 35, we have a planet's worth of humans plus 2 living apes and 1 dead ape. I just real quick want to read you my first note. It's all caps, and it's, what the did I just hear and watch?
And this was where I put down the whole thing about what's the pinpoint of the origin of time, which I kind of alluded to yesterday. But I also don't understand how this again relates to time and what occurred for the apes, because infinite regression seems like a solitary, singular entity for a person that time never stops developing itself. It doesn't make sense for the ability for apes to exist 2,000 years in the future, get into a spaceship, and somehow jump off a planet and come back in time.
Yeah.
I mean, Dane wrote Hasline didn't just have a stroke and start stuttering through this entire thing. Dane wrote out, artist painting a picture of an artist painting a picture of an artist painting a picture of an artist painting a picture of a landscape. He made him say it 40 times. That was a gross exaggeration. 7. And what I love is they cut out a line with Bond saying, it's enough to drive you mad, which I kind of wanted him to do. Bonds is already breaking reporter etiquette by having his hand over his face, like he's just frustrated and annoyed. Like you wouldn't put your hands over your mouth and your face and clasp your nose or whatever he does for this moment. But we do get the tedious picture of 4 painters on a thing. And I'm like, somebody had to fucking paint that thing. Maybe it's we should look this up. This is probably a classic painting explaining what infinite regression is.
I actually think it is.
So Hasline says the moment when our artist, having regressed to the point of infinity, himself becomes a part of the picture that he has painted as both the observer and the observed. I mean, this kind of goes back to the 2001 Space Odyssey, where there's that moment where you're in the White Room and everything exists all at the same time, kind of thing, right?
I read that that the White Room was supposed to be a zoo, basically, and the aliens didn't really understand humans. Like, we don't necessarily really understand animals. We put them in a cage and we draw a painting of the safari out there, and they think that they think that they're in a safari. So they built a zoo cage, what they thought humans would like.
Right, and that's what
the lights just happen to be on the ground. They know we like lights in there. The books were supposed to be, if they were books, they would just be a solid piece because they didn't know what we did with them, so they just made things to look like that.
There's a book out right now, Doomsday Clock, which is bringing Dr. Manhattan from Watchmen back and the Watchmen characters into the DC universe, and there's just this kind of omnipotence that Dr. Manhattan has, which is what
back and forth through time,
which is what Hasline is explaining right here, is the point when infinity happens that you become both the observer and the observed. And it's just this I don't understand how it relates to time. He then goes into the idea of multiple realities, which I think is an easier path to take.
And more apropos to what needs to be said here.
Correct. So he goes on, he says, Bonds kind of says, well, in that particular condition, he observes if he were observing time. All right. So the infinite regression is the point at which you observe time, I guess.
Okay.
Because you can observe all things at all points. I think that's where he's going with it. But he says, Hasline extends, he would perceive that time is like a freeway with an infinite number of lanes. And I'm like, wait a minute. No.
Time is a highway.
Those don't have anything to do with each other, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Infinite regression, being able to observe yourself at all points, doesn't necessarily open you
anything
up.
to do with the multiverse.
It doesn't open anything up to having multiple points of timelines. So it'd be a freeway, all leading from the past into the future. Again, he's now saying time only has one direction, but we have apes that just came back from that direction.
Yeah.
A driver in lane A may crash while a driver in lane B survives. It follows that the driver, by changing lanes, can change his future and may walk out of this moment moving. I guess that's the idea.
And at this point, this is where Bond just kind of loses the plot.
Yeah, it's just kind of. Hasline continues, Mr. Bonds, they do not find it hard to believe that in the dark and turbulent corridors of outer space, the impact of some distant planetary and galactic disaster jumped apes from their present to ours.
Okay. Should that not have been the entirety of what he said? When he said that, I thought, well, hang on. You didn't need to explain time and the possibilities of freeway
and everything.
And paintings. And I even thought, I started thinking, isn't a book a more perfect example of what time is? The ability that you can it contains itself within it. You can flip to any part of it. You can throw it in the air and you pick it up and you go wherever you want. That makes more sense about what they're trying to say. But then whenever it got to it, I thought, you don't need to explain any of that. All you have to say is, I have no doubt that some extraordinary event could alter the flow of time. That's all he needs to say. If they're saying that the Earth was destroyed or something like that, he could throw that kind of thing in, and that makes sense. That's all I need to know.
But that's a big leap of faith to say something in the future and outer space broke and sent them back from the future to the past.
It's no bigger leap than that somehow a painting looking at itself explains it.
That's why I would still think that I would be thinking that this is some sort of conspiracy to disrupt our government, because the Russians have bred human-sized talking apes and sent them over there, and we're going to just upend the American government because they're not going to know what to do with it.
Dude, you're watching too much Fox News.
Rather than they came from the future to the past.
I feel like there is what Dane is. I feel like the infinite regression moment should have just been thrown out. It doesn't lead anywhere. It just maybe shows the audience that Hasline is super smart.
He can talk about smart things.
And he can confuse the audience, and his mind is out there. Maybe he was trying to make him sound eccentric in his theories. But the idea that he believes that in the dark and turbulent corridors of outer space, the impact from some distant planetary or even galactic disaster jumped the apes from their present into ours, fine. The idea that you want to do this idea that there are split lanes of traffic where you can move, the observer person can move into those lanes to change the future is another one. That's the important thing here. The important thing that's supposed to come across, and maybe it's Hasline's own aha, but the important part that's supposed to come across to the audience is that we can change our future.
Yes.
That is what the audience wants to hear. It's a yes.
We can change our future, but only if we know what our future is to change.
But therefore, shouldn't Bonds be the one saying, so are you saying that our future is predetermined? And then he could say, no. Time is like a freeway where these kind of things can... That's what's missing.
Time is a freeway. He could even just say, if you take the theory of infinite regression, because he wanted to throw it out there, just throw the word out there. Don't
explain.
Don't spend this entire time going through this theory.
You could even say the theory of infinite regression, where time constantly looks back on itself. That would be enough.
Once you become the observer.
So what's missing is Bond's questioning of the. Are you saying this? He doesn't. It's not like he's listening and questioning what is being said to him.
Because he needs to simplify it for the audience. I mean, that's what a reporter should be doing, asking these questions. Okay, you've said this thing. Mm-hmm. Let me break it down. Let me ask you another question. Let me rephrase it in a way that my audience can understand what you're saying. And I didn't walk away understanding what he was saying. Yeah. I was like, I heard multiple theories that Hasline put forward. I had to research one of them a little bit more. And as somebody in 2019, watching this now, piecing these things together, I'm not sure that it would have been understood by a 1971 audience. I'm not saying they were idiots in 1971.
They may have been.
But Hasline really needed to
that was the year before I was born, so yeah, they were probably idiots.
Until you came on, everyone was dumb. Okay, fair enough.
But it needed that. It is not impossible to believe that apes from some distant corner came back, possibly from the past to the future.
Right.
We have theories out there that can explain it. What's important to understand is that, once you become, due to the theory of infinite regression, once you become the observer, you can see that there are multiple paths that you can take. Therefore, you can change your future.
Which then, goes back to...
Because then it explains what Hasline's trying to do on some level if he's a villain, right? It explains...
And that fits in, just to use other time travel things, but that's almost kind of what Doc Brown even says, that when you go back, if you want to retain your future, which is Marty's brothers and sisters in the photo, you have to set the things to the...
You got to reset the things you broke.
Yeah. And so that's almost what he needs to say, and he never gets to that.
Right.
Things are not predetermined. If you want this outcome, you do this, but you can change it if you were to affect change that would then change that. So is
Dane leading the audience and Hasline into a direction that Hasline hasn't decided yet?
No, I think really what Dane went for, and I don't think he does a bad job of it when you're just watching straight through, is he wanted a theory that could be the, what? Wow, time looks back on itself? That's kind of cool and trippy. He's not asking for us in 2019 to break this down and say this is a completely failed attempt at trying time travel. I think he just wanted Otto to have a lot of big terms and ideas that we couldn't completely explain. Therefore, he's smarter than we are.
Now that we're trying to break it down, we're finding the little small flaws.
Yeah.
That go in that. I mean,
I don't think it's intentional to show a flaw in his thinking. I think if anything, it's a flaw in Dane's, that he wanted him to look so smart that he kind of construed.
I mean, if I were in the theater watching this for the very first time, not knowing this movie or the movies around it, watching the two prior movies, I've already accepted time travel.
Right.
The Lane theory is the one that I'd be listening for because it would say that the future can change, but he doesn't full on say that.
Right.
So I don't know that I would even pick up on it. And the Lane analogy is just a little odd.
It is.
Just the idea that an observer can change their future is one thing. The fact that we're in lanes and we had to go to the point where we could see multiple lanes and decide which lane we want to take was a little bit of a stretch.
But that still doesn't tell us how we get backwards in time.
Right.
Yeah. None of this tells us that.
No, it doesn't. And so the minute goes from there, and we do end with just a shot inside with everybody inside the cage, correct?
Yeah, they're watching the news.
So,
oh my gosh.
Let's shift to the little cagey, and it's only for a few seconds, but now our cage is so domesticated.
This is part of the this
Well,
part
no,
of the
yeah,
minute.
that's the next
split
minute.
second.
No, I thought that, according
we-
to mine,
we
I
end
had,
before
I had
ha-
a second. I had like 15 frames of this on mine.
Oh, okay.
I have it ending with not even Hasline finishing the statement.
Okay.
Or even galactic disaster jump from the apes from their present era into ours. Right? Is that her even ending? Sean?
I'm sorry, I'm looking. We start because the next minute we'll start with Hasline saying the proof lies in their
Okay.
eyes.
Yeah, that's
then
where I have it.
perhaps at some point we should all agree on which versions we're watching because according to Amazon, I had 15 frames of that show.